Welcome to this special edition of Behind the Business on the Boise Beat, where we get into the world of professional fighting, otherwise known as the Hurt Business. Today, we're spotlighting a remarkable journey to the ring, featuring the highly anticipated pro debut of a fighter who has transitioned from the wrestling mat to the octagon, Anthony Castro. Joining us are the masterminds behind his training, Coach Hector Castro of Top Dog Boxing and Coach Pete Nunez from Full Force MMA. Together, we'll uncover the stories behind their unique collaboration, explore the depths of Anthony's preparation for his debut on March 29th at Front Street Fights 28, and what makes this event a landmark moment in the world of the fight game. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Behind the Business on the Boise Beat. I'm your host, Gordy Tamau. Today, we're talking business, but we're getting into a different kind of business, the Hurt Business. And in case you haven't heard of what the Hurt Business is, we're talking about the fight game here. We got two friends up on board, coaches from different sides of the state, but with the same mission on board. And they got something really special that they've been working on for a long time, and an introduction into a pro debut for a fighter who's getting geared up here, coming around the stretch in about a week and a half or so. And we're super excited to get that on deck. So without further ado, Pete, Hector, good to see you guys. How you doing?
We're doing great, Gordy. Thank you. Thanks for having us, man.
Super stoked to get you guys on board and talk shop a little bit about what you guys do. And love to hear the story a little bit about how you guys cross paths as well, because Hector, I know a little bit more than you, Pete. I know we kind of cross paths at a wrestling tournament, and it just so happened to be that, we kind of knew some of the same people, which was cool. Hector, let me ask you, how do you and Pete cross paths, by the way?
It's kind of a funny story. I didn't know who Pete was. I just kept hearing his name and asking if I was his brother and things like that because everybody says we look alike. But
Just a little bit.
so yeah, yeah, that's how I knew of Pete, and then we kind of met by Juan Labra.
Okay.
He's the one that actually got us both linked up together.
So you guys are both coaches and in your respective fields. And Hector, you're coaching primarily boxing, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And Pete, your primary focus is MMA. Is that correct?
Yep, that's correct. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So Pete, how did you get into the game of coaching and getting into this world of MMA?
I grew up in Ontario, Oregon. Ontario's one of the most dangerous city in Oregon. Literally, it has the biggest prison in Oregon. So a lot of the families will travel to Ontario to get close to their prisoners. So with that being said, there's a lot of violence, a lot of fights, a lot of personal struggles. And so growing up for me, I mean, it was kind of a little tough, low income based housing, not having a lot of money, getting into a lot of trouble. I came across one of the MMA coaches that I had. This was into 2005, beginning of 2006. I started fighting MMA for a guy named Rick Reyna, who's still actively training. So he's still a coach, has his gym out in Fruitland. And, I started training with him, and I fought for a good solid 4 or 5 years in MMA. That was before Idaho was even a sanctioned state. So
Yeah.
the sanctioned body for Idaho didn't come until after I started fighting. So a lot of the fights that they had growing up, they weren't recorded fights. It was kind of funny because they used to promote these fights, and they were like these, I don't know, kind of like low end MMA fights. And if a fighter didn't show up because it was an unsanctioned fight, the coaches could be like, "Hey, is there anybody that wants to fight at 185?" And somebody from the audience would come in, and we get the fight going. So MMA for me has been rooted. I started boxing when I was a young age too. Started wrestling at a young age, so it's kind of just been with me my whole life.
Yeah.
So.
And Hector, how about you? Like, how did you get into the world of boxing and coaching?
I actually started boxing when I was 13. My coach was last name was Nava, and we just were training and stuff. And I trained for a while. Wanted to get my mom to sign off on me fighting, but that never happened. For the longest time, from 13 to 18, I was just boxing, just training and stuff like that. When I was 18, I moved up to Boise for a little while. I was training down there at it was called Idaho State Golden Gloves. Moved back after a few months, and didn't get a fight or anything, and been kind of coaching Anthony ever since he was little.
And so for listeners that are wondering who that is that you're dropping, Anthony's your son, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And so we'll get to Anthony in just a second, because pretty prolific and an interesting story, and Anthony himself as well, and what he's coming to do, and you guys both play a key role in that, a pivotal role in that, which ties into Pete, what you were talking about, the environment that you grew up over in Ontario. And obviously it's an environment, kids that maybe don't have that sense of direction in their life. How have you found what you do to be instrumental in impacting the communities around you? Because I know you've been able to coach in different places, not just Ontario, right? Like over here in Idaho now as well. How have you seen what you do as an MMA coach impacting the fighters in the communities around you?
So everybody has their why. I'm a big Seneca fan. Seneca has a book out there. It's Find Your Why.
Yeah.
And it took me a little while to understand, like the meaning behind why I do what I do, and finding purpose in that. And so I when I moved to Burley, because I was living out there for almost 12 years, when I moved out there, I didn't really have a vision to bring any of my talents, any of the anything that I grew up learning, the MMA, the boxing, the wrestling. I really didn't have any intentions to do any of that. I was actually playing for a semi-pro football team. It was called the Diggers, and they're in Burley, and that's where Juan Labra Jr. and I actually first made contact with each other, and somehow it came out that I used to fight back in the day. We were actually playing a team out of Ontario, and a couple of the guys on the team had mentioned that I used to fight, and for the longest time I tried to kind of hide that. I didn't want any part of fighting, and it started out with Labra. Juan Labra Jr. He had mentioned about me training him, and so I agreed to training a couple guys. But I got really hooked on that level of service that you're actually asking about, like the difference in the community and the youth. The goal with Full Force MMA when we first originated it was to really target like a bullying prevention program. Kind of help the youth, that have been struggling with either getting bullied or have had issues with self-confidence issues or something. Mainly the youth. And we had a couple kids that had come in. One, he's a good friend, Gary Asher. He's out of the Twin Falls, Idaho area, and he had a boy. He's at the time he was like a sixth grader, maybe fifth grader. Had been struggling a little bit, and brought him in. We've worked with him for a good solid 9-10 months, and you could see his confidence level just go up. Yeah. And then I just got hooked. I got hooked. I saw the difference it was making in him, and meanwhile, obviously, fast forward a few years later, and my son was born, and we dove into just coaching in a wide spectrum. I coached at Minico High School for the wrestling team. I coached, for club wrestling. And just it's more, it's funny because mixed martial arts, it's a wide spectrum. It's boxing, it's wrestling, it's jiu-jitsu, it's everything. So a lot of the successes that I've had within the gym isn't solely focused just with the MMA side, or the MMA team. It's like you're asking, it's within the community. So the impact that we're making isn't just the parties benefiting isn't just the MMA team. It's the whole community for sure.
Yeah, it's amazing. No, I'm inspired by hearing that you guys sticking to it, and you guys have been doing this for a minute now. I know the impact that you guys are having just by running and crossing paths with some of the people that you are interacting with on a regular basis here over the years. And so, you're out of Full Force MMA, and Hector, Top Dog Boxing. How do you guys work out when you're working and training with some people, especially that are getting geared up for a fight? You're in different cities, obviously. Like, how does this partnership kind of work out with you guys training guys together? Can you elaborate a little bit for me on how that works out? Do you have a certain segment of camp that goes with you, Hector, and then it comes back to Pete, or what's kind of the methodology behind it?
Well, this is all kind of new to us now because Pete recently moved and everything, but prior to him moving, we would have basically 2 months scheduled out on what we were doing Monday, what we were doing Tuesday. Now it's just kind of, I'm taking care of the boxing side, and he's doing the arranging on everything else. Anthony, when he's up in Boise, he trains with Pete. He's been traveling a lot up there. He comes out here and trains with me as well, and we'll just focus on the boxing part. We got a lot of guys that have been helping out a lot on the sparring over here, so it's been working so far.
Yeah.
So
it's definitely been a learning curve. Me moving to the Treasure Valley, that wasn't the plan. Obviously, I got transferred for work, so the vision was, the long-term vision was, and we had it all planned out. We'll have move into a bigger facility, and graduate our kids over at Minico, the best place to wrestle, and that was kind of the plan. But as far as moving here to the Treasure Valley, so like Hector mentioned, I handle a lot more of the administrative things. The day-to-days, if I'm dealing with the Idaho Athletic Commission, or if I'm dealing with, like blood works, physicals, stuff like that. As far as being in the trenches and coaching, we've had a lot of support here in the Treasure Valley.
Nice.
We've had a youth or childhood gym that we used to go to. It was a sister gym. It's called Sidekicks MMA. The owner his name is Chris Reyna. It's actually Rick Reyna, the guy that coached me. That's his cousin.
Okay.
But he's opened up his gym to us. He's given us the key to the gym. We train. He spends a lot of time with Anthony. Anthony's bounced to a couple other gyms here in the Treasure Valley, so he's not skipping a beat. Like Hector said too as well. He spends a lot of time in Burley. That's home gym, so we're making it work. I appreciate Hector for his patience, because it hasn't been easy. He's done a phenomenal job with his coaching, man. So
yeah, well, I bet broadening your scope a little bit here in this area has probably assisted in some ways. Like you said, you got different people now that you're interacting with, open up their gym to, etc. It opens up some other opportunities, right, for partners for your fighters to train with and to get in the trenches with in that space. So, I'd have to imagine there's some pluses behind it. What I want to do now, if we could, I want to shift over to another bit of a focus here, and that's on a promising athlete that we've been kind of alluding to here, and that's Anthony Castro, Hector's son. And I want to bring him on board in just a second. Looks like he's chiming in, about to jump on board with us here. Hector, talk to me from a father's perspective. I was watching a clip of Anthony when he fought some time ago, an amateur bout, and I think it was titled "Fastest Knockout in Idaho History." It's something like that.
Yeah.
He dubbed it. And I was watching that, and I couldn't help but think, because I'm a dad to 4, and I was watching you walking up to the ring with them and whatnot, and giving him a hug, getting ready to walk into the ring. Talk to me through your mindset, your emotions, kind of how you feel about your boy going into a fight like this, and what goes through your mind during that transition.
Yeah, it was a lot was going through. It's you've always got that thought of anything could happen and things like that. As a dad, you're worried, but since he was little, this is something he had always wanted to do. So I was excited for that aspect of it. But I'm not gonna lie, I was really nervous to see him in there. My nerves do calm down. To be honest, I was more nervous watching him wrestle than I was any other sport. It's just weird for that. You're getting punches thrown at you, but you're just worried about a takedown instead. So
yeah. I get it. I had to ask you that, because that came across my mind as I was watching that, as a dad myself. But yeah, let's drop on board Anthony. It looks like he's waiting online for us here. So what's up? Welcome, Anthony. How you doing, bro?
I'm doing good. How you doing, Gordy? Thank you for having me on.
You got it. Looks like you're lounging and relaxing, looking pretty relaxed, leading up to a week and a half for a big moment in your life and in your professional career, right?
Yep.
Yeah, talk to me a little bit about how training camp's going up to date here, because we're looking at a March 29th pro debut, your pro MMA debut. And how many amateur bouts have you had under your belt leading up to this, by the way?
I had a whole bunch of boxing matches growing up as a kid, and I was grateful I had the support to do that with my dad. And I basically built my base through boxing. I love throwing hands. And as far as MMA goes, I was 5-0 as an amateur with 4 knockouts. And yeah, it's a great feeling being able to be in there.
Talk to me about how you're feeling going up, a week and a half leading up to a big day for you where you got your pro debut is finally here. I know it's something you've been anticipating for a minute, and you've been training super hard from what I can tell and what I've been able to hear. How you feeling going into this the home stretch, I should say, of training camp here?
Pretty good. We still got some days to, grind, but I've been grinding for months, and so I'm excited to get in there. I took this fight camp seriously, and so it's been great to just stick to the grind and have a goal in mind, and I'm excited to go out there and chase my dreams.
Yeah,
and represent God and my family.
Yeah, that's what's up. So let me ask you about this, man. Your background is a little bit diverse, right? You got a little bit of boxing in your mix. You've obviously wrestled, right? You had a college career as well over at Minnesota State University Moorhead, right? With the Dragons, you were wrestling with them for a season, and you got that under your belt as well, and notched up some pretty cool accolades in that space as well. How has your boxing background and then most recently your wrestling, how do you say that's prepared you for this upcoming season where now you're transitioning into pro fighting?
So wrestling, it was a big passion of mine. It was always challenging. I was normally wrestling throughout even boxing, and so I feel like my style kind of meshed throughout the both of them. I like to think of it like I have an explosive style, and like wrestling is a good base to have. A lot of UFC champions have a base in like wrestling, and a lot of them were college wrestlers. And so knowing that I wanted to be a pro fighter, I wanted to make sure to get some college accolades and be able to scramble and fight with the best grapplers in the world too. So I made sure to keep that in my back pocket.
No, it sounds like you are. I mean, I've been able to see you in person or not in person live when you fought before, but some of those have been pretty short and sweet, so I didn't get to see a whole lot. But I'm stoked to see your progression leading up to this point. And Pete and Hector, I'll let you guys chime into this as well. How have you seen Anthony's development and progression without giving away the blueprint? Right, we don't want to give the blueprint away here, but how have you seen his progression from when he first started fighting in his first amateur bout leading up until now?
Honestly, with Anthony in general, he's a very talented kid, man. He knows where to go. Like you mentioned before, I mean, his arsenal is fairly, it's pretty large, So, but to answer your question, I've seen him just develop, just making those transitions, because obviously, you're boxing or you're doing, wrestling. There has to be some type of transition, in positions, and so he's come a long ways. His kickboxing has evolved. He's done a great job with that kickboxing. That's kind of one of our focuses last couple of years, is kind of transition him a little more with his legs, and he's done a phenomenal job with that. But as far as his growth, another thing too, outside of his martial arts stuff, is like his faith. I think that's another big thing. His faith with God has grown a ton, and his relationship with his Heavenly Father. I think that's huge, man. And as an athlete, when you're solely depending on yourself, and it's hard, but when you have that spiritual backing and knowing that you're not alone, right? You're out there and you're fighting a good fight. I think that's for me personally, in the last couple of camps, I've noticed that his growth, his spiritual growth, which I wanted to kind of highlight for sure.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I'd have to imagine, Anthony, that having that element into your life is helping you, mentally being able to face this next transition in your life, right? Because going from an amateur stage to a pro stage, I have to imagine it's a little bit more pressure, right? Even if you feel that coming on yourself or from others around you, there's a little bit more pressure. But it sounds like, tapping into this other arena where, you believe that you're fighting for something bigger than yourself has helped you, not just into training, but you can kind of envision yourself already in that ring and handling business a little bit differently than what you did in the past. Am I right?
Yeah. Of course, the pressure is always going to be there. Even in my amateur fights, I would get pretty nervous, but you just got to think about the work you put in. You got to trust that. You got to trust your coaches, the people around you, and of course, trust God. I've come a long way, and I believe I can go out there, put on a show, and pursue my dreams and do well in life. So I'm I'm trying to
Yeah.
make sure I accomplish all the things I had planned.
Yeah, I believe it. Yeah, and leading up to this point, many of us have inspirations, or inspirational figures that we look to in different arenas, and not even necessarily in the same industry. But are there particular people that you've watched, whether that's boxers, whether that's fighters, whether that's business leaders, whether that's people that are community leaders, etc.? Like, is there anybody that stands out to you that's been kind of an inspiration over the years as you've watched, and that's encouraged you to continue pursuing this path?
I mean, growing up as a kid, my relationship with my dad, just like boxing and wrestling, yeah, just being able to see like the father and being someone who I can like rely on is giving me how do I say, like a good base to kind of look up to, as well as
Yeah.
like Pete. Like Pete is a great role model, like just being like a good person,
Mm-hmm.
doing the right things for the right reasons, as well as yourself. So for that question, I would have to say my dad, for one, just being able to see how he approached raising me and just doing his best with that. And like we grew up doing this, so like it's nothing new to us. Like wrestling, boxing, those were our passions. Like him coaching me and me fighting as well. So I was able to just see how he was able to like get me through that time in
Yeah.
my life, and being able to see like even how Pete is with his son, how he's like guiding him through it, trying to give him the best shot at life, because we do need role models. So
Absolutely.
I would have to say that. And so my third answer would be you as well. So just like being a man of God and guiding your son through that as well. So it's been great. I have good role models. So when I get older, sorry, I'll be able to do the same that I've been able to see you guys do.
Yeah. No, that's great. No, thanks for sharing that, bro. And no, this was not a paid sponsorship. I didn't pay him to say that either. Right. But I think that highlights the importance, of what we had kickstarted earlier, where I was asking that question about the community impact, and the things that we do have meaning, they have purpose. It's the why that Pete, you're hinting towards as well. Is like, why do you do what you do, right? Everything we do has an impact in some way, shape, or form, and it ripples across the planet, whether you see it or not in your lifetime. And I think that's super important, especially for anybody that's leading with kids, right? And I've always thought of the sports arena, because I coach wrestling too, but I don't see it as just sports. I see it as character development for kids. And so many kids that we run across, they don't have that foundation at home, or they don't have that foundation in other areas. And so absolutely, I can tell that it's impacted you to have men like these guys here in your life continually that are consistent, hold you accountable, right? As well, because that's something huge. I think as we grow into becoming men, not having people to hold you accountable can quickly allow us to run and be loose cannon somewhere.
Yeah.
And so props to you guys for doing that and helping Anthony through this particular season of his life here. As an athlete, Anthony, because I consider you a professional athlete already. I mean, you've been doing this for a minute. Like you said, this is all you know. You've been doing it forever, right? And so I consider you a professional athlete already. What would you say are some of the keys that are going to help you and assist you come Front Street Fights here in March at the end of this month?
So thank you for considering me professional already. I thought I was a professional a long time ago as well, so I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But I would say just the work that I put in, the passion that I've had for martial arts, not just like training, learning, like going over patterns or whatever you want to call it, just the passion I have for it, and being able to dive into martial arts, being able to build my foundation. I'm expecting to just trust my skills, because I've spent a lot of time in the gym, whether it be wrestling, boxing, kickboxing. I love jiu-jitsu as well. And so I'm counting, on God, myself, and I know I'll be able to go out there and put on a great show.
No, I'm excited for you. I'm stoked. For anybody that's looking to connect with you and wants to know where they could find you, they're not going to be able to find any backstage footage of things that'll give things away necessarily, but I know you do share things online via social. Where can people catch you online?
Yeah. So on Instagram, I'm mainly on Instagram. I have Snapchat and stuff, but I would say my main handle for social media would be Anthony Castro MMA. That's my Instagram.
And so for Front Street Fights, this is going to be coming up real quick. as of this date, you know, we're going to be only roughly over a week away by the time people are catching this. So March 29th, Boise, Idaho, right, is where you're going to be fighting. And if I has seen it correctly, you can correct me if I missed this, but I think you're opening up the pro card. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yep. The first fight on the pro side. So it'll be a good show. I'm excited to go out and perform.
No doubt. So we'll be putting the link to tickets in the description here. So make sure you jump on that, cop your tickets, get there early. You don't want to miss the grand opening of this piece here. I mean, there's going to be some bouts handling themselves beforehand, but you don't want to miss the fireworks that are going to kick off for sure for Anthony. Anthony, is there any last words you want to leave listeners with, or any other shout outs, etc.?
Yeah. I just want to say thank you for the support. Everyone who supports, we came a long way, and here soon in the future, we're excited to make big statements. And we got a great gym back in Burley, Top Dog Boxing, and with Full Force MMA, we're excited to be put on the map here soon.
Yeah,
with plenty of fighters, and we're continuing to grow. So thank you all for the support.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for joining, Anthony. I appreciate it. Pete, Hector, it's been a pleasure as well. Thank you guys for joining me.
Appreciate it. Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us on, dude.
You got it. And for those of you tuning in, you are tuning in to Behind the Business on the Boise Beat, talking the Hurt Business. You heard it yourself. It's going down. Front Street Fights, March 29th, Boise, Idaho. You don't want to miss it.